Three, two, one. Welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome to the lessons from the screen. Today with me again is my good friend Sagar Chitipalli. Hi Sagar.
हाय यश हेलो एवरीवन कैसे हो आप लोग.
You may know him from our last episode where we talked about Dil Se,
यस आई वाज देयर.
where we can,
Hmm.
Sagar, we can talk a lot more about Dil Se or about you
Yeah.
or about me,
Yes.
but we'll not do that.
Why?
You know why? Because we have no time. We have no time to die.
Yes, absolutely.
We just had to make that shit joke. Sorry.
Yeah, it happens to all.
Well, if you haven't yet realized, the movie we are going to talk about today is James Bond No Time to Die, which we just went to the theaters. The theaters just opened here in Mumbai. So I, Sagar, and a bunch of other friends, we went to the theaters to watch it. What, day before yesterday, Sagar?
Yeah.
So how was your experience watching the movie in a theater after so long?
No, for me, as I'm a sucker for watching movies in theaters, I quite enjoyed it. As in, again, sitting on a seat with no distractions, just with the sole purpose of watching a movie is pretty exciting for me. So, in that sense, yes, I enjoyed the experience of seeing that film on a big screen.
Right.
What about you? Yes, you had to get up early to come there.
Yeah, I did. It was an early morning show. I did have to get up early, but let's be honest, I have no regrets. It was a really nice movie. I'm not the biggest James Bond fan, but I do enjoy watching James Bond movies. So it was good, but then I'm quite opposite of you. I do not like watching movies in theaters and multiplexes because it is not exactly distraction free. Because there will, luckily in this screening there were only us, there was nobody else, luckily, but usually that's not the case. There's a lot of people, and there's some kid crying, and there is this uncle whose phone keeps ringing, and then there is this another uncle who has no interest in the movie. He's just talking loudly on his phone throughout. That just keeps happening in theater, and I really don't enjoy that.
Okay.
Really find it very annoying. That's why I am opposite to you. I like watching movies at home.
I don't know, man. In that sense, I've had that experiences, like these kinds of experiences, very less. Only maybe when I'm going out to watch some mainstream film. All the other times, I only watch movies that I feel that I should watch this on a big screen. Other than that, I don't go for any, like every movie that is out there. So yeah, that's been the case for me. Other than that, the whole, like most of the time the theater is fairly empty. But other times when the theater is full is more kind of the spectacle movies, like say a Bahubali or a Marvel movie. So yeah, there everyone comes to enjoy, man. So more so than often, my experiences with big screens have always been delightful. So yeah, man, and I don't know, yeah, James Bond being Daniel Craig's last movie, I thought it was to be seen on a big screen and not on a small laptop
I agree
screen.
with you. I agree with you. That is also a reason why I went to watch it, because this is Daniel Craig's last James Bond movie.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, we should completely go and watch No Time to Die.
Yes, absolutely, man. It was a good send-off movie, dude. I would say that it was a good send-off for Daniel Craig.
This was the most Daniel Craig James Bond has ever been.
James, okay, so again, when you say that,
But anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's first rate this movie. How much would you rate it out of 10?
see, frankly speaking, if I have to rate the movie based on how I liked it as a story, I wouldn't rate it that high. For me, this movie must be a solid 6, not more than that.
Okay.
Just good. Yeah.
For me, I think it's
I
7,
could know.
slightly higher.
Okay.
Maybe a lot of emotional.
Yeah.
It's more emotional than it's logical. I agree with you. This is not like the pinnacle of filmmaking, but then again, this is Daniel's last James Bond movie. Spoiler. He dies at the end of it, and it's a very sweet, a very romantic kind of death for James Bond, traditionally a character who's away from romance and sweet things, and is this sharp go-getter, the macho who is not affected by emotions.
Again, maybe that's what made his send-off a good send-off. If it's like it's this, what do you say? It's this way where this is a complicated guy with a complicated life, but he gets to have a what do you say, relatable, like happy, kind of happy ending. He's dying, it's not exactly happy for him, but
It's quite a redeeming end. I won't call it relatable. Like dying on a World War II nuclear silo because of nanobots is not exactly very relatable.
Again, relatable as in this, like in a sense I can say, if maybe I don't know how people would think, but like the kind of happy endings we have in a romantic films. Essentially, this was a love story at.
I agree.
Even if you say at a surface level, it was a love story of James Bond and his lover. Yeah.
Swan.
Yeah. Thank you.
I agree. So, okay, for me, again, as I said, the movie is a 7 out of 10. I think a huge reason behind it is the fact, as you said, there is a very redeeming end to the movie, to Daniel's run. It's a very feel-good kind of thing, you're really sad that he's dying, but you feel that warmth and you feel that emotional connection with the guy. Other than that, it's just like every other James Bond movie. There is a cool spy who's not really a great spy, because every time James Bond goes to a party or he goes anywhere, everyone is like, look, he's James Bond. I'm like, isn't that kind of defeating the purpose of being a spy if everyone knows you're James Bond? And this guy's not even trying. Okay. One thing I find very funny in James Bond movies, he goes everywhere and introduces himself as, hi, I'm James Bond. I'm like, bro, you don't do that as a spy. You don't go and tell people your real name. At least make it Jamie Bananas or something.
So I would like to ask one question. See, for the viewers, I haven't read any James Bond novels. I haven't seen any. Yeah, I haven't seen any other films that were other than like Daniel Craig's James Bond. I have seen only his James Bond series.
No, I have seen more James Bond.
Yeah, so maybe in that sense you can help me. Is he a spy? I always thought he's working for the government. He's not, like, ideally what is a spy? A spy is someone who goes to another nation, gets this, what do you say, gets a disguise, works in between them, seeks information and comes back. James Bond essentially is someone like the Mission Impossible guy. Fuck yeah, I am forgetting names, sorry people. So like he's someone who is out there saving the world from something bad, that like kuch bura hone wala hai, so I might as well go and save the world. So essentially, is he a spy, or he's just someone, some cool person who knows how to fight and how to use weapons, saving the world, working with the government? So I think, is he a spy is my actual question. Like,
so when you think about it, originally he is introduced as a British Secret Service agent. Okay. So I don't know, I'm not British, but and I really don't have good understanding of secret services, to be honest. But to me, that is kind of a up for debate or up for interpretation kind of a title, right? Secret Service agent. I'm sure they do not have a job sheet, where these are the things that are expected from you. It's a very open and up to, the situation and requirement kind of a job.
Yeah.
So I think, they have purposefully kept it vague, maybe.
Yeah. Again, it's also about the name, dude. James Bond sounds cool. Sounds really cool to hear.
I don't know. So here is the fun part. Okay, the writer, Ian Fleming, the guy, the writer, when he originally wrote it, he wanted to keep it very. The name James Bond came from, something. It sounded like an accountant's name. He wanted to keep it a very subtle, very under the radar kind of a name, to show that most of these spies have a very under the radar, a very common accountant type of a name that nobody will ever doubt. But I think over so many years, I think his first book came out in, I think, 1950s. So what, more than 50 years, right? Almost 70 something years, 70ish years of the cultural thing, is essentially knowing James Bond as a cool badass spy for 70ish years has really made us think James Bond is a cool name. Otherwise, it was a subtle under the radar kind of a name.
Okay, so was it the movies that made that catchphrase Bond, James Bond, or was it written in the script? I mean, written in the novel?
Not sure actually. Maybe we should have got somebody on the podcast who is a huge fan of James Bond.
Yeah. Exactly.
So he or she would have been able to tell us better.
I guess. So what I think is every name to begin with feels like a normal name. Okay, but it's the way you say it. Like, it's the way Bond delivers his name. It's like a good introduction. Like anyone.
Yeah.
Like for me, where I lack is to give myself a good introduction. Like who am I? But yeah, it's like it's enough when he says I'm Bond, James Bond, and we know he's James Bond. That's it. So like it's more like even in
you should try it
see
probably.
our films. Yeah.
You should probably try it. You should be like, hi, I'm Palli. I'm Chettipalli. I'm Sagar Chettipalli.
Yeah,
you can one-up James
good.
Bond by saying it in 3 breaks instead of just 2.
Yeah. And so that's it. That's what I was saying. It's the way you say the name that makes it sound cool. Like how Gaitonde became a cool name. Just because how they say it. So
Right. So the other thing about this Bond, Daniel Craig's Bond, if you see the Bonds before Daniel Craig, you see anybody else who has played Daniel Craig, anybody else who has played James Bond. James Bond has been this guy, he's not a person, he's more of this concept. He's more of this superficial, superhuman kind of a guy who goes anywhere, does whatever he wants to do, gets out of it without any harm, and it makes it very unbelievable, unattachable for me. The idea was, of course, to make it look cool, and I'm sure it looks cool, but it's not very, it's not something I would ever believe in. How can this guy go to a different country, kill somebody, and not, get harmed at all in the process, then come back and do the same thing in the next movie?
yeah,
Whereas you see Daniel Craig's James Bond, if you see Daniel Craig's James Bond, this is the first James Bond that has the school life, fucks the hottest chicks, drinks martini, drives the fastest cars, kills anyone he wants, or anyone, not he as he wants. He's not like a terrorist, but you get the point. He gets to, kill, he has sort of the license to kill, as they say in James Bond movie. But you also see, the dark side of this lifestyle. You also see the cost that he has to pay for being James Bond. He doesn't just drink martinis because it's cool. He drinks martinis because he's an alcoholic. He has a history of alcohol and substance abuse. He doesn't just fuck the hottest chicks because that's hot. He does it because he has abandonment issues. He's grown up orphan, and he has abandonment issues. And even physically, in the Casino Royale, first Daniel Craig movie, you see Daniel Craig's body when he's coming out of the ocean. It's sharp, it's chiseled. He's been, of course, going to the gym, and you see a nice, good body. And eventually, that body is shown to us again and again in other James Bond movies, and you see that body is not so clinical and pristine and clean anymore. The later when you see it in that movie and in other movies, you see there are scars, there are wounds, there are bullet wounds. You see that body, he doesn't have that body because he loves having that body or he wants to show it off. He has that body because his job requires him to have that body. You see those bullet wounds and those scars, you realize this is the real cost of being James Bond. I think that was a huge change from how James Bond used to be before Daniel Craig.
But I think that is not essentially. I think that is how we have changed. How
as society
we have
exactly,
changed.
Exactly.
Yeah. How the society has changed in how it consumes stories. So it's also about how the present day writers and filmmakers out there, or authors for that matter, anyone who's saying any kind of stories, it's how they perceive the society now, and that's how they write it. And we like some ground reality so that we could relate to these characters. And that's
exactly
it. So,
I feel that's like a change in what the society wants and what our generation wants.
It's the growth between how James Bond is being James. Okay, let me say that again. It's the transition of the thought that being James Bond is cool to being James Bond is difficult. So that's the change that has been introduced.
To just awing, to just being in awe of that job and that character, and now having legitimate respect for.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect, in fact, for Daniel Craig now, the guy who plays James Bond.
Yeah. So I don't know the exact story, but there was this when it was announced that Daniel was going to be the next James Bond. There was some kind of it was split into, I guess, two things. Like some were thinking, no, he's not gonna make a good James Bond. But it was, I think it was that unusual choice that made it more believable. It's up till then it was like these machos, always good looking guys, but this was someone who looked macho but also looked very different. It was a fresh introduction, I feel.
I don't get it. What do you mean by different?
Friend, I mean, see, it's how would I say it? See, wait, let me just say it. Up till now, I think it was he looks handsome. Yeah. Okay. James Bond is someone who is very good looking, and I'm not saying that Daniel Craig is not good looking, but he is good looking, but he also looks very different, very rugged as a person. When you look at him, he looks a man who is confident, and that brings his good looks, but also looks very
like
experienced.
He has taken a beating. He looks like he has taken a beating in life.
Yes. Compared to other,
let's say Timothy Dalton, I guess that's that's how we pronounce his name. He looks like again, I wouldn't say he looks really nice. He looks like almost too nice. He looks like I don't know how do I put it now, like a Formula 1 car. It's really fast, but you're not taking it on the road outside. You can only drive it on a very specific kind of a racetrack. It cannot be taken in the dirt and gravel. Well, Daniel Craig is I don't know, he's a Tesla Model X, goes 0 to 60 really fast. You can also go off-roading in Daniel Craig. That's yeah, that's quite a hot take. You can go off-roading in Daniel Craig. So you're right, Daniel Craig is the first James Bond who is more relatable, so to speak, who is more believable I think believable is the better word. It's more believable that there is this guy called James Bond who lives this life of a secret agent. And the other thing, with Daniel Craig, I really like that guy. Maybe because he is one of the shorter actors in terms of height to play James Bond, and I'm a short guy. I'm a short guy, and it really makes me feel good to know that short guy can be James Bond. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's just Daniel Craig's personal history. Everyone loves rags to riches kind of a story. Well, he's not exactly rags to riches, but this guy used to wait tables at the National Youth Theatre in London back when he was a teenager and a struggling actor. And his parents separated when he was quite young, and he has had not the most ideal, not the easiest childhood. And the first James Bond movie he watched was Live and Let Die, Roger Moore's Live and Let Die. And he really loved watching that movie because he went to see it with his father after his parents had separated, and he was not living with his father. And that's why the movie was very special in his head. And then look, I don't know, I find it very fascinating. A kid, a boy, sitting in a theatre, watching a James Bond movie, dreaming about being James Bond, and then actually becoming James Bond.
Yeah. That's a really great.
Yeah, I think it is very special and very motivating when you hear that story.
Yeah. So for me, I haven't watched many Daniel Craig films. I have only seen this James Bond films, and also I went to see Knives Out. Man, that movie is great.
I'm sorry, which one?
Especially he is really great in that film. Knives Out.
Okay.
If you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it, dude.
Okay.
Daniel Craig, one of the best performances. Like really fun, dude. Really fun performance to watch. That is one of his really good performances.
Sure. Nice Out.
Very, very fun movie. Knives, K.
Oh, Knives Out. Okay.
Knives Out. Yeah. Do watch that film, dude.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Knives Out. So,
So,
the other thing about Daniel Craig's James Bond, other James Bond have been smart. They have had these fancy gadgets and smart things. And don't get me wrong, even Daniel Craig's James Bond has those fancy gadgets, but not as many as previous Bonds had. Because again, let's be honest, we already live in this era where we have the fanciest, craziest gadgets. Like our smartphones are essentially what James Bond used to have, Or you look at something like an Apple Watch, dude. It's a watch. It's a watch that not only tells you time, it can measure your heart rate. It can take a ECG. An ECG, if you go to a hospital, they have these huge machines that take ECG. An Apple Watch can do that. It can measure your blood oxygen level. It can call the police if it feels you have fallen down and you are not able to get up. It can do all of that, and it's a watch. Isn't this already a James Bond gadget?
yeah, he could probably.
So I feel, like it's one of those social changes that we are talking about. The way, people don't want to see a larger than life James Bond. They also don't want to see fancy gadgets anymore because they have better gadgets than what James Bond can ever imagine to have.
See, end of the day, when it comes to an action film, dude, no matter how much gadgets you have, it's always exciting to watch a hand-to-hand combat more than fighting with gadgets and stuff.
And I think Daniel Craig is just pristine for that, He's pristine for this hand-to-hand combat, which we saw quite a lot of in No Time to Die.
You can say that, yeah. So it's not now that we are talking about the story. I think we are going to segue there. Let's talk how in general we liked it. So yeah, there is action. I won't say that.
Okay.
But for me, the story felt a bit weak too. For some reason, mostly my major complaint with the film is that there were these characters, right? It picks up from where it was left in the last film, which is Spectre. Yeah.
Inspector. Yeah.
And now we are introduced a new villain, the Rami Malek's character, and he's obviously.
Oh! Can I quickly add that Rami Malek is just fucking amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
He has a small role, doesn't have a lot of time on the screen, but he has a very strong presence on the screen. Rami Malek is truly Oscar material. This guy has fucking killed it. This guy has killed it.
I would say that. Yeah.
Small role, very crisp, very powerful. Very powerful.
He did act really well in this character. But what I felt about mostly every other character is like at least the villain side, the story or the Swan's backstory. There were like the story, the characters were connected to each other, but the backstories were very weakly done. That's what I felt. The connections could have been more complex and more interesting. Here, just the thing is, what do you say, Spectre? I am not remembering names of the characters, but if you see, one second, what was the villain in the last film? What was the character's name?
Oh yeah, that guy.
Christoph Waltz.
Okay, let me think
Christoph Waltz's character, I will say that. Yeah.
Right.
He killed Rami Malek's parents, so he just took revenge. So that's where the story ends. There is no depth to what happened, why exactly happened, what were his choices, where he comes from. It's just we know that some injustice has happened to Rami Malek's character and is doing this. So there is no drama, like there is no elaboration to these stories.
Never get to feel. You never get to empathize with Rami Malek.
You can give a really great performance, and everyone did in this film. But because not having these characters, like these characters are intertwined with each other, but their backstories are very poorly connected. So that's where the film lost in writing, I would say that. For some reason. Also one of my other major complaint is we are introduced to a new 007 agent, and I rarely saw her in action. Like most of the time, like Daniels, the original 007 comes and he just picks it up from there. So there is not one moment for her to shine. Like we get to see this character Paloma. She had more action, I feel, than her.
See, I feel they wanted to show it like that because the new 007 is somebody who asks for permissions. Is somebody who says, I see this target. Do I have the permission to kill or arrest? James Bond is not that guy. You tell James Bond. I think it's Casino Royale. There is this guy. James Bond is not supposed to kill him. They want to have him alive. But he does this huge chase and he gets into an embassy and he starts firing in the embassy, which is against the Geneva Convention. You're not supposed to do that. He still does it. He blows up the whole embassy. He catches the guy, and at the end he kills him anyways because fuck him. That's James Bond. That's how James Bond likes to work. He is not the guy who will, play by the rules, ask for permissions. Whereas the new 007, they have shown as a character who plays by the rules, and that is to her detriment. I think they want to show that James Bond is better than her because he does not play by the rules.
See, that we get like that we understand by ourselves because we know we have grown with James Bond with all these films. We already know about him. what I just said, ki even though you are taking permissions, but definitely there will be combats in your what do you say, coming experiences, right? But there is no, like, I didn't feel she had any like combat scenes as such. So like at least it was very little. At least if she is a,
I think her purpose in the movie was, I think the purpose of having her in the movie was just to, you know, make Daniel Craig feel, you know, possessive, uncomfortable.
yeah, that can be true. Again maybe this movie was also, if you see it in a way, this maybe must be like organically designed to be a send-off film for Daniel Craig or Daniel Craig's James Bond.
I felt that it was completely designed to be a send-off film. It was a nice waving goodbye to Daniel Craig. Because, you know, they don't introduce a completely new plotline.
Yeah.
They continue with the same plotline as Spectre. New stakes are introduced, but new characters are also introduced, but a completely new storyline is not. That has been the running theme for every James Bond movie. Like the storyline resets itself in, you know, pretty much all James Bond movies. Like what happened before is done and dusted, but it usually doesn't continue happening in the next James Bond movie.
Yes.
Talking about weird things in James Bond movies, James Bond movies are kind of weird. You know, the weirdest thing I feel is, so at the end, at the climax, okay, he leaves from Madeline Swan's house, okay, in the car with the kid, and there's this 2 Range Rovers that go in the opposite direction. Then they take a U-turn, they come back, they follow him, he gets rid of both of them. Then a helicopter comes. Then this guy on a bike comes. Then another SUV comes. One by one by one. Why is it always like that in the James Bond movies, yaar? Who are these bad guys जो पहले decide करते हैं यार 2 SUV भेजते हैं? Oh, that didn't work. Then let's send a helicopter. Then send a bike. Why didn't they just send the helicopter in the first go?
Yeah, because helicopter was not meant to, like, it wasn't chasing James Bond. Okay, the Rami Malek was sitting in that helicopter. He was there for Madeline and her daughter. Okay, so he clearly came there just to take her away, and all these other SUVs, bike guys who were just to distract him. But that was a good chase scene, dude. I really enjoyed that sequence.
It is a good chase scene, don't get me wrong, but this is the climax of every James Bond movie, you know. There is this bad guy, and there's this lot of other bad guys with him who are willing to sacrifice their life. Like, how do you recruit such, you know, such not dedicated employees? How do you recruit such dedicated employees, yaar? Where do you get them?
I don't know. Maybe they post.
यार हमारे यहाँ तो 2 एडिटर इंटर्न्स रखो, 1 हफ्ते में भाग जाते हैं.
LinkedIn by LinkedIn. Maybe they post ads. Need a dedicated
killer machine who wouldn't mind killing James Bond.
Yeah, that would be, what do you say? It's very funny, right? To recruit. Is this a good idea to make a movie on that I am recruiting?
Yeah, how do, you know, James Bond villains find their recruits?
Yes. Yeah.
That's always weird to me. The other thing this movie did is it made me really want to go and drink some martini. I really want some martini after watching this movie. It just reminded me it's been quite some time I haven't had a martini.
I have never had a martini.
You should have a martini. Shaken or stirred.
See, like he says in the first film, do I look like someone who gives a fuck?
That's Casino Royale, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So talking about martinis, I think Daniel Craig's James Bond is the first James Bond that also, you know, doesn't take himself very seriously. He's up for making jokes. For example, you know, they are in Cuba in this party, and they end up into a fight. There's the scene when the waiter, James Bond is fighting with someone. The waiter crosses by. He is taking a martini with on a tray. James Bond takes the martini, takes the tray, hits the bad guy with the tray, dings the martini, and then continues fighting.
Yeah. That see, I think this was the first time we see like some light humor in a James Bond film, and so I don't know, just being biased, but like Phoebe Waller-Bridge is one of the writers on this film. I think that's her touch, maybe. Also, in a way where you see that there is this one scene where James Bond is fighting his fight and Paloma is fighting her fight, and they get near this table and they both drink. What do you say?
Yeah. Yes.
And they just move on, and it's light humor, which is nice. And I think that was a good thing to see, man. Like for a guy who's always serious and always in situations where he can die if if he's distracted. And then there is
but not Daniel Craig.
But
Daniel Craig is like, bro, you only live once, so let's make sure we get as much martini down.
Yeah.
Or since he's British, let me try a very fake British accent. Since he's British, he's like, "Oi, mate, let's make sure we drink as much martini before we die, because you only live once, mate." Sorry, Daniel. Sorry. Sorry to my second most favorite Daniel. The first is always Daniel. Before this joke gets out of hand, coming back to the storyline, which, to be honest, felt, as you were saying, it left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. See, usually James Bond movies are long. That's not a surprise. A lot of James Bond movies are much longer than a lot of other modern movies. For example, this was 2 hours 43 minutes, almost the same as Dil Se, which we were talking about last time, and I was whining that it's a huge movie.
Again, I don't know, when it comes to Hindi cinema and its length, it has never been a surprise for me if our films are long. They were always long.
But then see, even Casino Royale was 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
See, or Skyfall was also 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And so was Spectre. Okay, so James Bond movies are longer than a lot of other movies.
So it's a thing in the West, I guess, when they make jokes about how Irishman is a very long film, or how Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a very long film. But it never felt, because we are familiar with that concept of having.
But see, I feel I watched Spectre a few days before going to watch No Time to Die, because I just wanted to catch up on the story. And it didn't feel long, though I watched it for, I guess, the second or third time. It did not feel long, because there is a lot happening in the story. Whereas in No Time to Die, the story is not as elaborate, so to speak. The plot is not as elaborate. You are already expected to have watched Spectre. You already are, at the point where only a few, so and so many people of Spectre are alive, and this is what Spectre does.
But I liked how they didn't, even though it feels a short, like this movie felt long to me than compared to other movies. It did feel like I did have this argument, this movie is a bit slow, but I liked how they just went inside directly into they didn't do any time pass नहीं किया, लोग सीधा point पे आके शुरू किया. So I'm wondering, where did it go slow actually, because things were
actually when you look at it, it's not, as you are saying, they came to the point, because the whole first act is a huge setup. These guys are in south of Italy. They are in, I don't know, they are in Rome or something, and he's driving this Aston Martin, which is good. The sceneries are good. There's some beautiful drone shots. of that Aston Martin. But that's pretty much like every James Bond movie. If you've seen any Daniel Craig James Bond movie, that's how it opens. It always opens with a beautiful drone shot of some Aston Martin. And
But again, no, this film opened with the backstory of Madeline Swan, right? So this film opened with that backstory. The Rami Malek's character is there and is finding her father. But
Right.
her father is
Oh
not
yeah,
there.
I'm so
We
sorry.
see
Before that shot, yes, you do see
Yeah.
the backstory. Yes.
So that's what I was saying. We are directly into the film. There is like, yeah, you left out there. We are just picking up from there.
And can I also, since we are talking about Aston Martins, can I be honest? This movie is a lot of Aston Martin porn. There is a lot of very beautiful Aston Martins and a lot of very beautiful shots of those Aston Martins. For example, the opening shot with the DB5 is the classic old school James Bond car. You see this car revived in Skyfall. When Bond loses everything, MI6 loses everything, this car comes back, and it's very beautiful. You also see James Bond racing the new 007. When she takes James Bond to the airstrip where the C-17 is waiting for them. You see she's driving the DBS. Oh, it's beautiful. Can I say DBS is a very beautiful car? Can I say that though I am a huge fan of Ferrari, I think Aston Martin is making some very fuckable cars right now. Like the cars are very fucking gorgeous. I think the DBS is gorgeous. I think the Valhalla is gorgeous. In fact, you know what? Back in 2018 or something, I saw the Vanquish, the Aston Martin Vanquish in person in Mumbai.
Okay.
And I have to say it is one of the sexiest cars I have seen in person. And it really sounds phenomenal. It is really, the 13-year-old child in you. It really revives that 13-year-old child. It really makes that child go vroom, vroom, vroom.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry to say that most of the cars he named, I don't know them by names or by looks because I'm not a car enthusiast. But I do understand your point of that happiness you felt, of being a 13-year-old and having that feeling. So sorry about not exactly.
But see, I feel, we all, since we work in this industry and we have been making short films and web series for a while now, we understand product placement. In fact, we have done some in our own, content.
Yeah.
And I think Aston Martin with James Bond has a phenomenal product placement. I think they have a phenomenal, synergy going together.
Yes, absolutely.
In fact, have you noticed one thing? I heard this on a different podcast, and ever since I've heard this, I cannot get it out of my head. The James Bond villains, they always drive a Jaguar. For some reason, they drive a lot of Jaguars. Even in this movie, if you see, when he's being chased in Rome, there's a lot of Jaguars involved in that chase for some reason. In fact, Jaguar, I don't know when, but at some point they had this advertisement, this ad campaign where they said, bad guys drive a Jag.
Okay, so they are making fun of it?
I don't know. I think they're just embracing it. They're just like, we are the bad guys. I don't know. I feel James Bond is, being the icon that James Bond is, I think having your brand placed around him is a phenomenal deal. And if you see, for example, Aston Martin,
Why not do?
it's like James Bond and Aston Martin's tie-up is very old. Very old. So, anyways,
That's good, huh?
coming back to the story. Anyway, I guess I'll just cut it here. I'll just say, the story felt quite lackluster. it could have been better, more
Yeah.
vibrant.
Yeah. So I would say what specifically you liked in the film? Is there anything that you really liked?
What did I really like about the film? I must say I really I like the punchy jokes, here and there. These small one-line punches. For example, when he kills this bad guy in the climax, at the end, there's this asshole guy. I'm sure he's not an asshole in person. He's a very nice actor, but this bad guy who's just being very annoying since the beginning. You know who I'm talking about, right? Pramelo, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
That guy. When he
guy
kills
with
him.
the wonky eye.
Yeah, with the wonky eye. When he kills him and then Q calls and he's like, "Where were you?" He's like, "I showed somebody a watch. It blew their mind." I really like these
That was really
one-line punch lines, one-liners. Very nicely sprinkled
And
throughout.
somehow, now that you say, I do feel that James Bond is that one punchline guy. He won't do these elaborate jokes. He would have these punchline jokes.
Yeah.
So it's very James Bondish. Like if
And see,
James Bond.
I feel this was kind of brewing ever since Daniel Craig came to the Bond. Like as we talked in Casino Royale, he says one vodka martini. The bartender is like shaken or stirred. He's like, "Do you think I am somebody who gives a fuck?" Traditionally, James Bond has always been the guy who says one vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Daniel Craig is the one who says, "You think I give a fuck?"
Broke the chain.
So I think since then these kind of punchlines were brewing. It was just not working out, or it was a formula that took time to perfect. But in No Time to Die, I think it was really there. You know how when he sees the new 007, she says, "Oh, by the way, guess what do they call me? 007." And he's like, "Yeah, that's just a number." And then she gives him this certain look, and then she uses it again at some point.
Yeah, when she gives it back to him, like you can wait to reinstate him as 007.
Yeah.
Like she said, it's just a number.
So I think that was my favorite. I think that is something I saw was new and fresh in this Bond movie, and I really liked it. Other than that, I really liked the opening shot, where I said in Rome, James Bond is driving the Aston Martin DB5. And they are going through the mountains, and it's a very beautiful. There are some very beautiful drone shots. So I also liked when he has gone off grid and he is living with that boat thing, and the opening shot, the establishing shot where he's on the boat and it gets wider and you see he's in this beautiful blue waters. I think that is also a very nice shot. I think.
Yeah.
They are both very good examples of great cinematography.
Yeah. That's good, man.
Yeah, what's been your favorite part in the movie?
My. So one thing that really sticks out for me is a specific scene where now he's surrounded. So he and Madeline are in the car, and they are surrounded by everyone. Like all the cars, and everyone is shooting at James Bond's car, and he's just sitting there, and Madeline is scared. She's scared, and she's like, "Please, believe me," and he's just there. He's sitting there, and this wonky-eyed guy comes, and he's like just adjacent to James Bond, and he's still shooting, and he's just there sitting calm. He's trying to test Madeline. Like, is she saying the truth or not? And that I did feel the tension in that scene. Like, it was not about all of them surrounding. That scene was purely about James Bond and Madeline. It wasn't about the action going on. And
I
stuff.
agree
But
with
again,
you. You really do feel that tension in the theater. You feel it in the air.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that stood out for me. And how he escapes it, which was pretty cool too. And other than that was the fact that James Bond has a child.
Yeah.
He has a daughter.
He's a
And
family man
for
now.
me, yeah,
Oh, I think he'll be on the third season of Family Man instead of Manoj Bajpayee. Imagine him running on the streets of
Srikanth.
Mumbai, going to,
Uh,
some weird
again,
office in
Srikanth
Ballard
is a
State or something.
yeah, again,
My
Srikanth
dad's
is
office is
again.
in Ballard State. Maybe they'll be neighbors or something.
Why not?
Yeah, oh, their lift never works. So I hope once James Bond joins my dad's office, hopefully the lift will work.
Also, yeah, again coming back to the film. Also, the fact that they put this small little scene where James Bond is passing by and there is this alleyway, and he remembers something, like he just saw something and he comes back, and there is a small lost, his daughter lost the small toy, so he picks it up. So even though it's very, what do you say,
It's a
it
small
was a
thing, but
sweet,
it's very
yeah,
touching.
yeah. Because now we are like slowly it is for us, for as per the story and as a viewer, the filmmaker is slowly setting up that he's gonna die now. So they did
I knew it
that.
because I had already heard this podcast and I knew that,
Yeah.
at the end James Bond dies. Which I was really, hoping against hope that he doesn't. He somehow is. I'm still hoping against hope that somehow in the next movie
So-
there is still
so
Daniel
if
Craig.
That was not gonna happen. But
I know
see,
that's
if
not
you
gonna
see-
happen.
Yeah. See, also you should also look this film as a thing like it was a send off for James Bond. Like sorry, it was a send off for Daniel Craig, but it was also a beginning for a new person to take this mantle, right? So it was a setup for that also. So for that same reason, his friend dies inside that boat, right? So that they just kill off that character, so that the new James Bond has someone new to. So in that sense, they are circling things around. They are balancing things around for the new James Bond
I
who
agree.
will come. So it's a story about that too. It's a setup for that too. So yeah,
Agreed.
so that's
Also, can I just say that I have always missed. I saw Spectre. I saw No Time to Die, and I really miss the old M. You know that lady Judy Dench.
Judi Dench.
Yeah, I really miss that.
I
M.
do, man. I do too. I'll say that. I do too. She was, I don't know, she
Badass.
was more of a badass.
She was just badass. I don't remember which James Bond I saw recently. I think it was the last one before Daniel Craig. I think it was Tomorrow Never Dies. I don't know the last one. The last one before this guy, before Daniel Craig comes. And in that one, there's this scene where there's a lot of international tension, and there is some male guy, some male officer who tells M that I think you just don't have the balls to do this job. And she says, perhaps, but I'm glad that I don't have to think by them all the time.
Such a badass.
I'm like, that is a very feminist dialogue, that is like really, hitting where it hurts, like saying what is the very truth. Talking about, feminist dialogues and being inclusive, I think No Time to Die is a very inclusive movie. It's a very, racially, gender-wise, in a lot of ways, it is a very inclusive movie. I think it is the first time you see a black person in MI6. I don't think, James Bond has been always a white male. For this first time you see a 007 who is a female and black. But there's been M, who's been a lady for many years, but we haven't seen a lot of female characters and people of color in MI6. I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I think this is the first time you see a black person in MI6, that too playing 007. Not just that,
Also-
there's there's, like Swan is not a typical Bond girl all of a sudden, It's like Bond girls have been these hot women who are not as much women as more of an object, in a lot of Bond movies. They are just like, how James Bond drives an Aston Martin, that is his statement, it's a statement. The same way the Bond girls have been a statement. For a change, Madeline Swan is not a statement. She is not a status symbol. She is a real human being in James Bond's eyes, And I think I also really like that about Daniel Craig's movies. I think, Daniel Craig's James Bond is a more inclusive, more sensible, less of a stereotypical white male who thinks the world is his urinal to pee on, garden to walk in, Let's be honest.
Again, we
don't
can
know.
just. We can always say that, like present anything, like present piece of art or film or a book will always reflect the society at that particular time. So it's like everything is being very inclusive, and the film will too, and everything else will too. When it comes to creating something, so slowly and steadily, we will get there. We will get more inclusive in a lot of ways. So that's that. But
I see your point there.
One thing I would really like, if again the film will obviously reboot again, but I would really like,
as in the
to
James
see
Bond franchise.
Yeah. But I would really like to see the new 007 agent that we saw in the film. I
Play
would
as James
really
Bond.
like to see. Yeah. I would really like to see now the role. It's not, again, she is not James Bond, but it could be about 007 now. It could be that, but again it will be about James Bond.
I would like to see that. I would like to see a James Bond who is neither white nor male. I would really like to see a change, a sort of a paradigm shift in the idea, It's more of a concept, it's more of an image in your head than it is about the image on the screen, right? At the end of the day, like 007 was born out of it. It was born out of, society's desire to see a superhero kind of a man who can go anywhere, do anything and have no consequences.
For me, I don't want this thing. I don't want a female version of a James Bond. I just want this character to have her own story. So I was just saying that for me, I don't want to see a female version of a James Bond. I want this character to be again, because she was again 007, so it's natural to think that what different could it be. But I want to see that character in that scenario with all other characters as well, to have her own spin-off series. Again also Paloma, the character of Ana de Armas, but she was pretty fun too. She could have her own spin-off series, man. Yeah, because she's like,
I agree with that one. I would like to see a female James Bond because I'm a male, okay, and I have been seeing world through those lenses, right? I would like to see the world through a different pair of lenses. I would like to see James Bond's world through a different set of lenses. Like, how would James Bond's life be if instead of he, it was a she?
Nothing. Yeah, come to think of it, there are
I don't know. Like, when you look at it, it could be a lot of things. James Bond could be Indian.
It's about,
and
it's,
let's say it's an Indian female James Bond, and I'm sure she's like this huge spy. She has this meeting at 8 p.m. and then she's supposed to go and kill this huge terrorist guy, but at 4 p.m. she's sitting for family lunch and everyone is like, बेटा तुम शादी कब कर रहे हो? देखो लड़की को 30 तक शादी कर लेना चाहिए. I would love to see those, those kind of conflicts, because see, it's very true. It's very true. I have a lot of female friends who tell me that their parents force them that you should get married by hook or by crook by 30. You don't like the guy, still get married.
again-
You like him after marriage. And I think that's like bullshit advice. But Indian parents do force you into that. I would love to see a James Bond who has to
what I
fight
would
through
say
that kind of
is
shit.
See, thinking like that is not wrong, but think of James Bond more as a character. So in this scenario, if James Bond was a woman, she would make similar choices of maybe not having a family. She would because that job has that kind of stakes. You can't have a family, right? Even James Bond. Yeah, James Bond didn't have a family. It was
Agreed.
in his last moment of his life that he fell in love, and now wants to have a family. But yeah, it always think in that perspective. So for the sake of it, we could make that kind of a story, but it would be more of a comedy story because the scenario is like, it would be essentially, the thing you are saying is a family man like Shrikant Tiwari is in that situation, right? He is some kind of an Indian James Bond, and he is in that situation.
Fair enough. I wouldn't call him an
He's
Indian
pretty
James
cool,
Bond,
man.
but
He's pretty cool.
I see where you're
He stops an auntie going on a scooter
oh yeah. He's completely
to catch a guy because he's tired. Man. And that, if that isn't reality, then what is?
yeah.
If
I think that was a
isn't
very
rooted
smart
to
move.
reality, then what is, man? So.
I agree with that. Also, another question. Okay, hot question. This guy, James Bond. Okay, through all his movies, Daniel Craig's, Casino Royale, all the way till No Time to Die, he runs through walls. He runs on top of trains, which are moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Okay, he jumps off of buildings. He goes through bomb blasts. He has bullets being fired at him, and still his hair is fucking pristine.
Dude,
His hair is just mwah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
What
say.
gel are you using, Mr. Daniel Craig? I want to buy that
With
gel.
all his
Where do I
gadgets,
get it? Where do I get it?
that he is provided, I'm pretty sure they give him hair products too. That's a given. We don't see that.
Yeah, he has a hairspray.
Yeah, in the story it's happening. Like he's given hair products by MI6 to use.
Another thing that I hope he's given a lot of is condoms. Because he's a spy whose superpower is fucking. Yeah, like his superpower is just fucking.
But
okay?
again,
he sees a woman, 15 seconds into the movie, he's fucking
a
her.
man with that amount of practice must know when to pull out in time.
I don't want to make this podcast not suitable for kids, but at this point that train has departed. Yeah, dude, this guy's superpower is
Let's move
just
on
fucking.
then.
I'm sure after every mission when he goes to MI6 headquarters, his team is like, yeah, nice job. By the way, you could have done it without all the fucking you did. It's like right? The fucking is not the part of the job. You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed while watching the movie is we watched it in 3D, which is very annoying. I don't think I'm ever going to watch a movie in 3D again. You have to put these stupid glasses.
But that's there.
Okay, I already have
lately-
glasses.
Yeah.
So you have to put like
I don't know,
two set of
fairly-
glasses. And then because of COVID you have to wear the mask in the theater. So both your glasses get fogged up. Okay, it's like 2 layers of fogging up. You never know which glass is fogged up.
Difficult
And after that the whole experience of 3D, the whole it's not very immersive. It's not very convincing. It doesn't really. It looks fake. You feel this is fake.
So I would agree that this movie there was no need to make this in a 3D. Like ideally the aesthetics of it. So you could probably, like for me, my first movie that I saw in 3D was Avatar, and I felt Avatar was designed to be the movie was designed in a way to
Okay.
be in 3D. So me watching Avatar in 3D, I didn't feel that unease while watching it. I quite enjoyed it. But again, when it came to this film, there was no need, because
I
there
felt
was
very
more of stillness in this
annoyed.
film
I
than
felt
any
just
amount of
annoyed,
action.
you know. Like there are these scenes when they have subtitles, they're talking in a different language.
It's a bit
they're talking in a different language, there are
disorienting if you-
subtitles. The subtitles pop, they feel like they're closer to you.
Oh.
Why? They're fucking subtitles. They're fucking subtitles. I don't care. Or
But again, we can agree that 2D is
I don't
always
know.
better
Maybe
than
because we
3D in
watch a
that
lot of
sense.
2D content. You know, our phones are 2D. YouTube is 2D. Instagram is 2D. You know, lot of content we consume is 2D, and so little is 3D that our brains are just used to watching content like that. You could argue, but in this movie, I felt there were things. You know, like for example, if there is a wide shot and there is nothing in the foreground, you know. 3D I feel works the best when there is something in the foreground and background and there's a nice separation. You can see the separation, but when it's a wide shot, let's say there's the ship in the distance. In those kind of shots, when everything is in the background, I could see this layer of dirt, this layer of I don't know. There's just some layer of, you know, how when there is some dust on your lens when you have shot some footage and you see it's there. The same way I was seeing something in the foreground. It's dirty, translucent stuff, which is just making this feel like I'm watching a movie and not being immersed. You know, it just pulls me out of the immersion. Yeah, it just breaks the spell. You know, and it's very annoying.
See, okay, that could also be that our 3D glasses weren't.
The projector in the theater?
It could be the projector in the theater. It could be that our 3D glasses were not clean enough, or we were reusing the already
Could be.
used 3D glasses. It could be that thing. But again, when you say that you noticing this,
Disclaimer: the theater does say that, you know, they sanitize the glasses between every use, and we were given them in sealed up plastic packets, which we opened ourselves. At least I opened myself. So yeah, that's what they say.
I take
I
back
think they
my
were
point.
sanitized. They smelled like sanitizer.
I'll take back my point.
They did
The
smell like
glasses were
sanitizer,
not.
but we are just guessing.
So
We're just guessing.
But again, yeah, you mentioning that points, I would say that this movie was never, like, it wasn't designed to be a 3D movie. Therefore, we feel disorienting. So I have felt that in some other movies as well, where it wasn't supposed to be a 3D movie. Like, it isn't designed to be a 3D movie. It's just a 2D movie. They rendered it into a 3D format, and now you are watching this 3D movie. So that's the thing.
Yeah, it did look
Yeah.
like that to me as well.
So that must be the case.
Along with that, another very annoying thing was every time there was a light source in the movie, as in, you know, if there is a torch or there is a light or something behind Daniel Craig or behind anyone, I could see two fake lights, two, you know, phantom lights around the light source. Like if there is one torch, let's say, I would see a phantom torch on the left and on the right, which is not there in the movie. I was just seeing it.
I didn't notice.
I don't know if that is,
Yeah, but that's fine.
maybe it's because of the polarization on the 3D glasses, or maybe it is you know, the way how 3D works. They are two slightly different images, and both the lenses are slightly differently polarized, so maybe it was something like that. I don't know, something technical. Somebody, if you know, please let us know.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was very annoying, you know. It again kept breaking the illusion. Felt like I was playing this video game from 2002 or something. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about this movie.
And then even me too. So I would just say that Mr. Daniel Craig, sir, if you are listening to this podcast by any chance, we liked your James Bond movies, and thank you for being James Bond. And it was a good send off to him, this movie. Yeah,
It was a nice run with you, Mr. Daniel. You're insanely inspiring, you know, going from a kid who watched a James Bond movie and felt like, wow, that's cool, to then playing James Bond.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very motivating.
That's that. And so I would ask you this question. Yash, have you thought that who do you want to see as the next James Bond? Have you thought it? Because all over social media, people are having their fan casts. So who do you think can make a good James Bond? According to you.
As in, you want me to name a actor, a person?
Is there? Have you thought about it, or do you want someone? Or do you think someone could be a good James Bond?
Okay. Now that I think about it, I have thought, I don't want to see another white male play the role for sure. That's very certain. That's something I'll just not take. I'll be like, I'll be very disappointed if that happens. So, that is completely off the list. Every white male is off the list.
Okay.
I would personally prefer some female. I would personally prefer a female, or maybe somebody who is not straight. I think that would really add a lot. Because with Daniel Craig, again, we are ending off with a James Bond who has a personal story and everything, and is we saw more of James Bond than we have ever seen before, in terms of his upbringing, in terms of his personal challenges, how he's an alcoholic, his substance abuse. So I would like to have sexuality added to the mix. I would like to see somebody who is, being male is, I wouldn't say easy, but I wouldn't say, that's so easy. I wouldn't say that, but it is surely,
I would
easier.
Simplify and say, maybe I am ignorant, but I would just simplify and say it's difficult. It's not easy to be a person in general. So whatever.
It's not easy to be a person.
Whatever your identity is.
But being a male is much easier than a lot of others, right?
Compared to.
So, but I would like to see somebody who's not white and not straight male. I would like to see the kind of challenges that we face. I would like to see somebody who doesn't only have his or her work as the problem.
That was very elaborative, but I thought that Idris Elba would be a good choice because he's been making.
I'm sorry, who?
Rounds. Idris Elba, the guy who played the new Deadshot in Suicide Squad. If you have seen
Idris Elba. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a nice guy. Yes, I really think I could see him as the next James Bond. That would be a lot of fun.
Choice. And I thought he could be a good James Bond. Yeah, would be a cool one too. Yeah.
I'm still thinking, who can be the next James Bond.
Yeah, now we are into this rabbit hole.
Yeah, now that you have said.
Now we are into
now that
this
you have
rabbit
said,
hole. That's how the internet is. Nobody seem to, what do you say?
See, this guy.
Choose one.
This guy Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
The guy who plays
Man of Steel.
Superman in Man of Steel. That would be a very traditional, very safe approach. But I would not want to see him as. I just do not, want to see another white male James Bond.
He's a popular, choice for most of the fans out there. But Henry Cavill could be a good.
I would also be very happy to see, the new 007 agent, Nomi. I think her name is Lashana. Yeah, I would love to see her. I think she would make a phenomenal Bond. You always have, if there is British action, you always have Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Have you realized every every, it's like every British movie about a war, especially about Second World War these days, has Benedict Cumberbatch.
Ah,
He's like the safe as fuck guy to go
yeah.
with. It's like Akshay Kumar in Bollywood is for, if you want to make a movie about India doing something amazing for its people or a war somewhere, it's Akshay Kumar. It's Benedict Cumberbatch if Britain is in a war.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, never thought of it like that, but yeah.
Off the top of my head, maybe Dev Patel.
Yeah, Dev Patel. Yes. Even I've heard. Yeah.
Love to see an Indian James Bond, but I don't think that is happening.
If you want to like give that quote Indian James Bond, I would still nominate Shrikant Tiwari to be the Indian James Bond. With all his intricacies, there could be no other better James Bond.
For a change, hot take, maybe, you will say I'm going too far. Maybe you'll not like this. Maybe Priyanka Chopra.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
See,
I would really like to see a out and out female action film in Bollywood, man. I think there are some in making, but yeah, I would like to see. Again, Priyanka Chopra is in the new Matrix film, but I don't know what her character is, or is she gonna get to do some action scenes. But yeah, she is there in that film, and that's so great.
See, if you look at her action roles, she has played in both the Dawn movies with Shah Rukh Khan. I didn't like either of the movies, but I think she has really carried that persona well, of that strong woman, strong lady who's got, she knows her shit. She is the boss. She's really got that persona dialed down. I would really like to see her take it to the next level while playing Bond.
Why not? See, it drops down to how you are. If it's about the action, then it's also about who the action director is, who is choreographing that action. Because if you see the new season of the Family Man, there was that Samantha played a role, and she really kicked ass, dude.
I think she did amazing.
So there was good choreography, dude.
I have
there
to
was
agree.
such a good choreography there. And also, if you have to say, there is this light-hearted.
I would agree.
There is this light-hearted movie called Mard Ko Dard Nahi Hota. And even in that there is,
I have no idea.
Even in there is some good amount of action. You can say it's a superhero film. It's not, he doesn't exactly have superpowers, but it's more of that kind of genre. And even there is a nice amount of action by the female sidekick.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? I have a phenomenal recommendation for the next James Bond. Like, you just cannot have a better James Bond than this guy, Ted Lasso.
Even I would nominate. I would sign a petition for that.
Yeah, I will go to court.
You will sit and talk it out. You're like, you need to
I know,
do
right?
this. Yeah.
I know. This other guy will be like,
yeah, he would
Mr. Bond.
Leave everything. He would take a packet of biscuits for him, dude.
Yeah, he'll go to meet the villain with a packet and he'll be like, howdy, I bought a packet of, I don't know, I bought this box of biscuits for you.
It'd be very fun, dude. Yeah, that's a good one.
I would love to see Ted Lasso as the next James Bond. I am sold.
Yeah. Okay. Even I will support that, dude. Yes.
We should probably do an episode about Ted Lasso sometimes. It's this super, under the radar, underrated
if
series,
that's the
man.
case, yeah. If that's the case, let's have a lot more people, because that would be more fun. Because being a series and it being a nice series, there are always again, for any piece of movie and things, there are multiple takeaways. everyone has something different in their sleeves to take away. But Ted Lasso, as a it celebrates like togetherness in a way, because he's a coach.
It celebrates
it's about,
inclusiveness.
Yeah. So I think
it celebrates
would
being
only,
nice to people.
It would only be fair if we have a lot of people, like at least a group of our friends sitting and chatting about Ted Lasso together. Then it would be a very wholesome experience for us too. So if we have to do that, I would say let's have more people to discuss.
But before we do that, we need to see Ted Lasso as the next James Bond.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yes.
Ted Lasso is the next James Bond.
Yes.
And you know what? This guy,
Fun, dude.
Jason
Sudeikis.
Sudeikis. He should just officially rename himself to Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah, dude, he should just like start calling himself Ted
He would
Lasso.
never trim off his mustache.
Oh yeah, never trim off your mustache.
Ah man, such a good series.
Such a
lifts you
lovely
up.
series, man. Dude, it deserves a 10 on 10 on IMDb. I don't know why IMDb shows it at 8.5. It should be a 10 out of 10, man. It should be a 11 on 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that
well,
I would
anyway,
agree. Yeah.
with all that said, let's end this episode.
Yes.
Any closing thoughts? Anything you wanna say about Daniel, about James Bond before we leave?
Would just say what should I say? Like Mr. The second I'll say it again. Yeah. Mr. Daniel Craig, sir, see you at the movies. Not as a James Bond now, but yeah, many other movies as many other different characters. Yeah. I would like to.
One closing thing I would want to say is, the Billie Eilish song, the intro song.
We didn't talk about
amazing,
that.
man. Fucking amazing. I see. I am not the hugest fan of Billie Eilish, but I think she makes some really good music. There are some tracks which are really, that's really something I love, and I didn't know, her track is a intro song for No Time to Die. So I was pleasantly surprised to hear you, Billie, at the theater.
Nice. It was a good song. So when it came to
100%.
songs, I only like the most song. अरे यार what I'm saying. जो सबसे ज़्यादा अच्छा लगा था, the song was by Adele. Skyfall वाला song I really liked. Yeah. After that, I think this is at the second place for me. It's a really good song.
Okay. I really like, of course, like I've heard the song before, so I was like, yeah, this is nice. Yeah. Anyway, I guess that's it for this episode of the podcast.
Yes.
Lessons from the Screen. We'll see you soon with another movie or TV show. Maybe Ted Lasso should be the first TV show that we do on this podcast.
Yeah, it could be.
Yep.
Yes.
And with that, take care, everyone.
Adios, amigos.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Wash your hands, and wear the fucking mask.